Welcome to, this is the last lesson on Tarantelle. It's kind of an add-on lesson because it was brought up to me by a student of mine that they weren't sure about some of the timing and other notation found in Tarantelle. So I wanted to provide some clarification in this last lesson. So we're going to review a few things about time signature. Time signature, there are two pieces of information in time signature. It's kind of like a code. The first piece of information that we get is how many counts per measure. That's one of the most important pieces of information that we have for time signature. In this, that's the top number. So the time signature is this fractional number here. The top number in each case, 4 and 3. So 4, 4 and 3, 4 are the two time signatures we usually learn first. This would be 4 counts per measure. And this one is 3 counts per measure. And there are other types of time signature, but these are the two most common and the ones that we learned first. The second piece of information that you get in time signature is the note values. So we've all learned, so it's like a set of instructions or a code. We've all learned that quarter notes are worth 1 count, right? And a half note is worth 2 counts. A whole note would be worth 4 counts, and so on. This tells you, so for this number 2 point, the note values, it refers to the bottom in the fraction. So I'll put a box around those numbers. In each case, it's 4, right? So if you were to take away this top number, you would be left with this in each case, 4 on the bottom of this fraction. Well, another name for 1/4 is quarter. So this is a set of instructions that tells you the quarter note in this time signature gets 1 count. We've learned that quarter notes are 1 count, so this is not anything different. So we're going to look at some more examples of time signature. We're going to look at 6/8, which is the time signature for Tarantelle. So first thing we look at is how many counts per measure. We look at the top number for that. There will be 6 counts per measure. Then we look at the bottom note. We have something new here. Before we had a quarter note, right? Now for 6/8 time we have 1/8. And that's going to be an 1/8 note will equal 1 count in the traditional 6/8 time, unless you're given extra instructions that tell you something different, which in the case of Tarantelle, there is an extra set of instructions. Tarantelle has this notation that tells you a dotted quarter equals 1 count. So that means that is different from the classical 6/8 time that we all learn 6/8 time as doubling the note values. So an 1/8 note would be worth 1 count. This would be worth 3 counts in traditional 6/8 time, unless you're given the instructions that the dotted quarter equals 1 count. Let's look at another example. 2/4 time. This is an interesting one because when we interpret Tarantelle with the dotted quarter equaling 1 count, the music ends up having a 2/4 feel. How many counts in 2/4 per measure? 2 counts per measure. And what note ends up getting 1 count? The quarter note. Or this kind of note equals 1 count. So we'll be showing you how that works out with the Tarantelle notation. How do we go from 6/8 to something that is like 2/4? And it's an interesting transition, but it requires the interpretation of the 6/8 time ends up giving you something that is like 2/4. So we'll be taking a closer look at that later on in this lesson. So let's get into some odd time signatures. How about 3/2 or 9/8? Both of these are pretty unusual. This would have 3 counts per measure. And what note would be worth 1 count? It would be the half note. Unless you were given some kind of notation to tell you to interpret it differently. This one would have 9 counts per measure. And what note would be worth 1 count? The 8th note. Would be 1 count, which is going to look like that, and up here it would be like that. So going back to measures, dividing the music up into chunks. In Tarantelle here, we have these measures here. They're you can tell by the vertical lines. So in this top one, we have a little partial measure right here with 1 note in it, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 full measures in the first line of Tarantelle. And then we also have 1, 2, 3, 4 measures for the second line. In 4/4 time, we're going to have 4 counts per measure. So we could have 4 quarter notes, each worth 1 count each, and then we put a measure line. Then we could have the half note, we could have some 1/8 notes, which would be the 1 count. Then we could have a rest, which would be 1 count, and then a measure line. Then we could have a whole note for 4 counts, and so on. Three-four time would be the same kind of thing, but you would be having 3 counts per measure. You could have a half note and a couple of 1/8 notes. That would be 1 measure there because it's 1, 2, 3. Now here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing about this note now, this is a dotted half, and it's common to confuse the dot found here in the dotted note with the dot in the staccato marking. So for the staccato note, we have a dot either directly above or directly below the note, and that's a styling that tells you to play that note as short as possible. When the dot is off to the side, that means something different. So this is a dotted half. And we have the half note here, which is worth 2 counts. The dot means to add half the value of this note that it's next to. So the half note is worth 2 counts. Half of 2 is 1 count. So you hold this note for 3 counts. In Tarantelle, we have this note that we've pointed out. It's a dotted quarter note. So this note is worth 1 count. What's half of 1? It's half, right? Half of 1 is half, so this note is worth 1.5 counts. And that'll be important when we interpret Tarantelle and the time signature found there. When we first learn about 6/8 time, we say that there's 6 counts per measure. And so we would count, so that would be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. As we're just sort of getting to know it, that's how we would think of it. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In Burgmüller's Tarantelle, there's an interesting notation in Tarantelle. First of all, you see the 6/8 time there, and then here in the parentheses is the interesting part. It is a dotted quarter, which is what we just went over. Okay, so if we look at the 6/8 time here in the traditional way, and there's 1 count each, 1, 2, 3 for that, for the dotted quarter. But when we add in the interpretation that a dotted quarter equals 1 count, suddenly it becomes like 2/4 time. And 2/4 time, this is how it looks. We have a triplet, and we put a 3 there to show it's a triplet, and that's worth 1 count. And then we have another triplet, which is worth 1 count. And then we have the measure. And then we have this. There would be a dotted quarter and an 1/8 note there. So this gives that rhythm, that fast flowing rhythm in Tarantelle. Okay, so right now we're going to use the metronome to try to count the difference between these rhythms. So for 6/8 time, there would be one of these per count. So it would be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. 2/4 time, we need to slow it down. So each triplet is 1 count, three notes per count. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. In the traditional 6/8 time, where what we see here is doubled. So that would mean that all of these 1/8 notes would actually be worth 1 count. They would be quarter notes, and there would be 6 counts per measure. But we'll have to understand that we interpret it differently after we get a good handle on the rhythms that are happening here. So here we have this 1/8 note all by itself, and this is called a pickup note. So you know how many counts should be in a measure, and this is just 1 count here. As you're getting started, you're going to be thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And I'm going to be writing the counts now in each measure. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you notice that each one of these is, you can see here how they're worth the 3 counts. Now here's something that was brought to my attention. a student of mine wasn't sure what this notation was. That is an eighth note rest. If the eighth note is worth 1 count in our analysis here, then the rest is worth 1 count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then here's the dotted quarter, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have 6. Now, this is another thing that you should remember. It's a tie. So when we have a curved line between the same note, that means you hold that note for the combined value of those two notes. So in this case, it's all 5 of these counts. And then we have this pickup note again for the next line. So we start out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll just put that as 6. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, rest, 3, 4, rest, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does that make sense? And the bottom is the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, rest, 1, 1, rest, 1. 1, 2, 3, and then this is going to be 4 and a rest here. So I use different notation here. Sometimes we like to just count all the way through to show all the counts in the measure, and then sometimes we like to say when it's a rest and then just the note value for each note there. So you can see it's kind of easier to learn the music this way and then interpret it as the triplets here. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate this at the keyboard now. First we'll just do the 6/8 time in the traditional way. Okay. So remember what we said, we're going to count everything in the measure except for this pickup note here. So that'll be 5 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, rest, 3, 4, rest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, rest, rest. 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, so that was the traditional 6/8 time. Let's show 2/4 time now, where each group of 3 notes is going to be like a triplet, and we'll get 1 count. Only 2 counts per measure. 1, 2. Okay, so hopefully this will give you a little bit better understanding of this timing here and what these rests and ties and so forth are in the music.